No, no, no. This can't be real. Like, there's no way people actually believe this, right? Like, there's no. Okay, I'm calling it now. I think they're exhausting it too much. All right, let's get to the news, though. President Trump holds a press briefing on the aviation disaster. We're obviously going to be talking about that. We got a lot going on, and people are not very happy about it. For those of you who don't know what happened, last night, or is it night? I don't know. It was during the night, right? This is one of the hardest parts about being in Japan is that I don't know how to describe what time things are happening in America. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah. A jet with 60 passengers and 4 crew members collided with an Army helicopter, a Black Hawk, from what I understand, while approaching the Ronald Reagan National Airport near Washington, D.C., sending the 2 aircraft plummeting into the Potomac River and killing everyone on board. It's actually a massive tragedy considering that the jet with the 60 passengers was basically about to land, right? The Army helicopter was flying without, the Army helicopter basically flew into the plane from the videos that I've seen. It seems like the helicopter did not have like the proper designation for flying, where you're just like constantly supposed to blast out to air traffic control that you're flying. The helicopter was warned about the plane, but they were looking at the wrong plane at the time. Air clearance, yeah. ADSB, thank you. A lot of aviation heads in the chat. I don't know the exact details. I can't remember the exact names. Anyway, the collision occurred at around 9 p.m. Wednesday in one of the world's most tightly controlled airspaces. This is Washington, D.C. This is the capital of the United States of America. There are flights happening all the time, in and out, and also there are a lot of helicopters flying around. It was just over 3 miles south of the White House and the U.S. Capitol. A search and rescue effort launched overnight and turned into a recovery operation by mid-Thursday morning, unfortunately. For some details, number one, the collision involved a regional jet out of Wichita, Kansas, that was preparing to land, and a military helicopter that was doing a training exercise, according to the Federal Aviation Administration. A few minutes before the jet was to land, air traffic controllers asked American Airlines Flight 5342 if it could do so on a shorter runway, and the pilots agreed. Controllers cleared the jet to land, and flight tracking sites showed the plane adjust its approach to the new runway. Less than 30 seconds before the collision, an air traffic controller asked the helicopter if it had the arriving plane in sight. The controller made another radio call to the helicopter moments later. Pat 25 passed behind the CRJ, apparently telling the copter to wait for the Bombardier CRJ 701 twin jet engine to pass. There was no reply, and the aircraft collided seconds later. The plane's radio transponder stopped transmitting about 2,400 feet short of the runway, roughly over the middle of the Potomac. The body of the plane was found upside down in 3 sections in waist-deep water, officials said. The helicopter's wreckage was also found in the river. NTSB officials said they were working to recover the data recording equipment from both aircraft. Now, there are a lot of issues here, and there are a lot of systemic factors in play. TMZ actually went and got the air traffic control audio, which is kind of crazy to think about. Here it is. Crazy that it's TMZ that actually acquired the audio. Here it is.
I don't know if you caught earlier what happened, but there was a collision on the approach in the 33. 5342, that's a Wilson Bridge tank for runway 33, runway 33, clear to land.
Did you see that?
Oh, that's public and AP got it first for what it's worth? Oh, okay.
American 3130, go around, turn left in 250, climb maintain 3000. Black Check 3, can you return to base? What? Black Check 3, proceed direct.
Yeah, sorry for the spam, but I'm an amateur pilot. No media anywhere is stating that the U.S. military just killed 60 or so people, and everyone is focusing on the FAA staffing when the 3 people on the heli should have seen that out of the plane. Yeah, no, this is entirely. There are still systemic factors at play. I think the FAA firings or the FAA downsizing is a major problem here. I think that plays a role for sure. But yeah, it's entirely the military's fault here for sure. They did it on purpose. I suspect that this is going to draw a lot of conspiratorial-minded people. The question we must ask ourselves and everyone else is, why would the American military assassinate 60 American citizens in the most public spectacle you have seen? What is the purpose? I cannot wait for the actual people that were on the flight, so that people can continue doing more conspiracy theories saying that, like, this accountant that was on the plane was actually investigating Jeffrey Epstein or something, and that's the reason why they did that. But in fact, here is CNN revealing one air traffic controller was working 2 different tower positions at the time of the mid-air collision near Washington, D.C., an air traffic control source tells CNN. But before we do that, before we get to all the additional details, now that I've given you what we know so far, before we investigate the crash in and of itself, let's hear what Donald Trump had to say, because he held a press briefing on the aviation disaster. I haven't seen this yet, but let me suspect something. Okay, I'm gonna be speculating on something that took place already. I'm assuming that DEI will be mentioned. Let's take a look.
I'd like to request a moment of silence for the victims and their families, please. Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning.
Isn't it awesome that there's just something that you can always blame when your decisions, like when your administrative decisions could directly lead to these issues? You can always turn around and just be like, nah, it's the fact that black people may or may not have been working the job. Great stuff, man. It's always a fantastic, super easy way to deflect the blame. I was a CH-47 crew chief. The helicopter could not have taken down the plane on purpose. They could have been in the wrong place and the plane would hit them if the ATC didn't catch them and correct in time. Helicopters are very slow compared to airliners. Yeah, I don't know why people think that the helicopter literally directly collided with the plane deliberately. It's insane. I don't think people understand how fast planes are and how slow helicopters are in comparison. And they just think it's like Grand Theft Auto 5, maybe. It's because the video looked like it was flying straight to it. Yeah, from your perspective, it looks like the helicopter is flying straight into the plane. That's physically not possible unless a plane has been parked. A helicopter, like a plane that is, even when a plane is landing, they're still faster than a helicopter. What's the speed of the plane on approach? Like even when the plane is approaching the runway, is still going like, 150, 140, 120, 100 miles. Like have you never seen a plane land? Like think about how fast it is when it touches the ground, even when it touches the runway. Think about how fast that plane is. And that is after the plane has already like pumped the brakes per se. It's a very fast moving target. 150 landing speed, FAA Andy here. Was an air traffic controller in the Marine Corps and then was a drone pilot. Most of our aircraft don't fly. Dudes are exhausted because they make us. They aren't supposed to. Pull 12 on, 12 off, then do flight ops. The military doesn't care about rules. Most drink before work too in aviation law. Jesus Christ.
For our nation, just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast, it was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly, and we are a country of, really, we are in mourning. This is really shaking a lot of people, including people, very sadly, from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States, and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people. Unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, it was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas, but we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA.
Trump signs an order blaming Biden and DEI for flight dangers. No. This can't be real. Like, I mean, this is, I'm sure this is real. Of course it's real. That's very Trump. But like, there's no way people actually believe this, right? Like I think stuff like this is going to lead to a diminished results, right? Because you can't constantly say, oh, this is a consequence of woke. This is a consequence of DEI. This is a consequence of woke DEI over and over again, and then expect people to go, yeah, that's right. That is probably what it is. Like, there's no, okay, I'm calling it now. I think they're exhausting it too much. They're hitting the woke. You have no idea what's coming, Unc. No, I think the average person is going to be like, all right, dude, come on. I think that you can only exhaust that for so long. People inevitably experience fatigue. Okay, that's what it is. I think looking at look. You want to know why? You want to know why I think this? Because notice how he started this conversation. He started this by, one, reading a piece of paper instead of freestyling. That implies the severity of the tragedy. Number two, in the piece of paper that he's reading, he said things along the lines of, today we are united as one nation. Okay? That also implies the severity of the tragedy. Donald Trump is an insane person who normally doesn't care about anything other than himself. So much so that he would have just gotten in here and been like, he would have gotten in here and just basically started freestyling. The fact that he's even trying to read the paper and stick to script implies the severity of the situation. So when you have something like this, when you have an accident like this happen, that is a truly great tragedy, and you immediately hit the DEI button, other people are going to look at this and go, is it though? Come on, man. You say that about everything. And this is just the first instance. Okay? I'm saying this is the first instance. Oh, just you wait. You haven't played in long enough, he's going to start cooking. No, I know. Guys, I know. He is going to start cooking. Of course he's going to start cooking. It's Donald Trump. He's a narcissistic asshole. Of course he's going to start chirping about a bunch of different things. I already told you I didn't watch this yet, and I knew he was going to blame DEI. But my point is, the people's reception to crisis like this is inevitably going to lead to diminished results for the DEI vein that they keep tapping into. That's all I'm saying. And it's not necessarily about like the faith I place on the people that vote for this guy. I just think that narratives like these are effective if you use them briefly. If you constantly say it over and over again, people get bored of it.
Faye Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that...
Like, I'll give you a direct example, okay? Egg prices are supposed to go down. They don't go down. They get more expensive, right? Let's say egg prices get more expensive, okay? You can't just keep saying it's DEI. At a certain point, people are going to be like, but you're the president. Do you understand what I mean? Some people will turn around and say, oh, well, egg prices aren't going down because it's like has nothing to do with the president whatsoever. I just realized that, even though I didn't realize it under the Biden administration. But like, people will still experience the harm and will go, okay, well, my president's not doing anything. Do you see what I'm saying? You can blame DEI over and over and over again, and it'll be effective for many people. Okay? It'll be effective for a lot of people. I'm sure Asmongold's community is like, hell yeah, even though it was a straight white airplane pilot, straight white helicopter pilot, straight white air traffic controller, straight white FAA administrator fired by straight white president and straight white billionaires or whatever. Ultimately, it's actually the fault of woke, right? Like, that some people in Asmongold's community probably eat this up. My point is, some people. I don't even think all people in Asmongold's community will eat this up. Do you see what I'm saying? Because, like, it's too much. It's too much. Like, there's not a single, like, black or brown person involved in it, which most people don't give a shit about, right? But, like, but also outside of that, it's like, come on, dude, you literally say this about everything. At a certain point, even people who are believers committed to this cause are going to be like, it's like, what are we doing here? Oh, 9/11 is a DEI situation. You know what I mean? It's like looking at 9/11 and being like, this only happened because of DEI. Like, you're ridiculous at that point. Do you see what I mean? It's like, no, there are certain things that transcend beyond that, and people want answers. And when you slam the DEI piece onto it, when you hammer the DEI button over and over and over again, people are going to be like, okay, well, I'm with you, brother. I think that, you know, we got to deport these migrants, and I don't think that I want a black pilot. I don't know, but like, maybe this wasn't DEI, you know? Now, my expectation isn't that they will see that and then start engaging in critical thinking overnight and be like, maybe what else has Donald Trump actually misplaced the blame on DEI on? Like, they're not going to do that. Okay? But it's a starting point.
And other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be.
Yo, this is okay. That's crazy. Yo, this is straight up. Yo, this is actually like, remember, the Nazis also hated the disabled too. Like, that's crazy. They actually unironically are just like, yo, if you have any disability whatsoever, f you. Like, what? That's crazy. Yo, what is happening? Also, I feel like Donald Trump is kind of disabled himself. You know what I mean? Like, what's he talking about? These guys don't even care about being a part of the in-group. They just believe that if they say the right things, they'll be a part of the in-group.
Air traffic controllers, I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
The ATC tower for this incident reportedly had 19 of the 30 staff say they needed for safe operation. That's the case for like ATC nationwide. Oh, I hate this. Dude, our endless profit seeking and endless cost cutting initiatives are unironically making like, it's just, oh God, it's making air travel less safe. It will ruin commerce. It will have major impacts. This is a problem that Ronald Reagan, I think, played a formative role in creating. And no president has really fixed it.
Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those.
Trump's previous FAA was hiring qualified people with disability as well. Trump has made clear he has less than zero evidence that the FAA is hiring people with disabilities contributed to yesterday's crash. So this whole conversation is a non sequitur. But since he has started the conversation, some facts. The same FAA website language Trump blasted today by hiring people with intellectual and psychiatric disabilities and other significant targeted disabilities was on the FAA website throughout his first presidency. In addition to FAA, under Trump, launched and repeatedly promoted a pilot program to hire capable, qualified people with targeted disabilities in air traffic control positions. The Department of Transportation has pushed, at least since the W. Bush administration, to hire more people with targeted disabilities. And the FAA repeatedly said during Trump's first term that it'd continue to do so, emphasizing, as it did under Biden, that they have to meet the qualifications for the posts. The January 14th Fox News article Trump cited today as evidence of a last-minute Biden FAA diversity hiring push right before the Trump came back into office. It was actually published a year ago, January 14th, 2024. Again, it was criticizing the same language that had been on the FAA website since at least 2013. I'm mostly staying off the site because gestures broadly at the site, but come on now. Alexander, the implication that this policy is new or that stems from efforts that began under the Biden administration is demonstrably false.
Implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website. That, you? No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy. And we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it. And then when I came in 2 days, 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Bro, does he think the executive orders are like God speaking? Like, does he think that executive orders have like magical powers? Yeah, dude, when you do a messaging bill, like a messaging executive order, it doesn't really change anything at all. Like the spending freeze was, that was consequential. But if you're like, we're going to eliminate DEI from air traffic control, like they're not going to move to instantly fire every single air traffic controller that like is in a wheelchair, you know? That's not, I don't understand where this is coming from. RIP, that Trudeau's going to Gitmo. Sad. You know his ass forgot what being president was like when there's constant crisis. Like he must have. He's like, oh man. Day 8 of the Burger Reich, by the way. Day 7, massive plane crash. Massive aviation incident. 60 plus people instantly dead. You're going to have a hard time finding a controller in a wheelchair. That's why the disability bid was a thing. What? If they want the best controllers, why don't they pay us the best money? I represent LaGuardia Airport as well as workers for JFK. Trump gutted the Aviation Safety Committee last week. Air traffic controllers, already understaffed, got Trump's buyout this week with a 1-week ultimatum to decide. It's not DEI. It's him. And Elon, too. Elon forcing FAA chief to resign because FAA fined SpaceX didn't help either. Yeah, I mean, dude, this is just straightforward bad management. And in times like this, unfortunately, when it's far too late to recognize, some people will find out exactly what the government does, right? Some people will, albeit when it's far too late, find out that these sorts of issues, these sorts of moves, these jobs that are otherwise invisible are actually very important in maintaining safety. When you have the proper tools at the FAA, when you have air traffic control working, it's invisible, okay? It's invisible. So you don't even think about it. You only think about it. You only think about the ATC being understaffed when it no longer is invisible. I read, I mean, there are reports on this stuff that the air traffic control in the United States of America has significant understaffing. It is the same principle at virtually every job site at this point. Virtually every industry, every sector demands more labor participation, higher percentages, and higher numbers in the workforce. And yet our cost cutting demands that people operate more efficiently. And that efficiency is going to lead to a lot of issues. That efficiency is going to cause problems, okay? Efficiency at the hospital implies that your emergency room nurse is having to take care of more than 5 patients, which is supposed to be the norm. 4 patients is supposed to be the max, right? Efficiency implies your nurse is now taking care of 10 patients, 20 patients, and you cannot give proper medical care to 20 people when on your 12-hour shift, the maximum amount of people that you're supposed to be taking care of is 4 people. But hey, guess what? That's a good cost-cutting initiative, right? It's better for the bottom line of the hospital, but it's actually lower quality care overall. It's also less safe overall. You do not want your grandparents or your loved ones to be taking care of someone who unfortunately does not have the proper bandwidth, the proper time, the space to take care of them, right? That is a great example of understaffing leading to worse results and less safety overall. It's not like the nurses are worse. It's just they're taking on so much more. And the same goes for the ATC. It's not like the ATC itself is doing a worse job because they're just like more black or something. It's because there are more people that must be hired for these jobs, but that costs money and we don't want to do that.
And their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress where you have many, many planes coming into one target. And you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis.
An FAA employee I know confirms the agency already lacks sufficient air traffic controllers. This is hours before the crash, by the way. The so-called buyouts and other attacks on federal employees won't help. Remember that fact when flight delays, crashes commence, And Trump will start falsely blaming DEI or Biden. And then it's like the Washington Times. FAA turned away qualified air traffic controllers based solely on race. From the editorial board of the Washington Times. That is literally an editorial piece from the Washington Times. It's no different than just like making up your own headline and then posting that as quote unquote proof. It's so goddamn stupid, man. That's the level of care and attention we have to proper media coverage nowadays. It's just like, hey, I saw this article headline that agrees with me. Look at it. It's like, did you read the article? Did you look at did you look at the outlet? Are you familiar with the outlet whatsoever? Like, is it an editorial op-ed? Like, is it an editorial piece? Is it actually objective news reporting? Is this website capable of objective news reporting? You says you lol. Dude, come on. I do this professionally. I'm not your favorite debate pervert content creator. Okay, I'm a media figure for the past 10 goddamn years. I work with journalists directly. Like, media literacy is one of the most important aspects of my commentary. Yes, I can see a headline and immediately know, or see a goddamn newspaper and know immediately what its actual inherent biases are. I don't need to use like ground news for that type of shit. Okay, you feel me? You understand? I know you probably watched a couple drama slop toopers who don't know anything about politics, don't know their ass and their elbows. And now you think like, well, I'm well equipped to think that this person who's a professional news commentator who literally gets consistent coverage from the likes of New York Times, LA Times, and numerous other legacy publishers about the work that he's doing in the field of new media. But actually, those guys are all wrong. Those professional journalists are all wrong. It's my favorite slop tuber that wrote a compilation of Reddit posts. That guy knows about media literacy. Get the fuck out of here. Come on. I ain't got no time for this now. He says you. I think I got to be a little bit more ruthless with people who just like have presented themselves as a formative, as a point of authority on things like this, while they are just simply dipping their toes into the field of politics without any sort of previous research, any sort of reading done whatsoever. Is crazy. I'm noticing this trend.
Sleep paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else that came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some
Tom Cotton, he admitted moment later.
reason, he had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, do you see, he was talking about, do you see him? But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also, he said, follow him in. And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine, follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold, but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from...
President Trump just not asked if he'd visit the crash site. Responds, what's the site? The water? You want me to go swimming? He's got such a way with words, dude.
Memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case, acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything.
Dude, everything. Like, 9/11 happens in the United States of America, and our leaders immediately use that as an opportunity to go to war with like all these countries in the Middle East, resource-rich nations that we want to invade. Tragedy happens under the Trump administration, and they're like, well, this actually is because we didn't the disabled. Far too many black people that have been hired for these positions. Like, it's crazy. Not to say that like one is better than the other, okay? Make no mistake. Moments of crisis create moments of opportunity for all administrations, okay? It's just crazy that like the scope has narrowed in spectacular fashion. Interesting stuff.
The Kennedy Center tape, we had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. That's why I'm sure we'll see other tapes, because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down.
I just don't see it has to do with the ATC being understaffed. Well, it's because you're actually looking at a real problem that exists in the ATC. Okay. Also, accidents still happen regardless if the ATC was properly staffed. Okay. I mean, look no further than like a place like South Korea, right? Despite the fact that these are also capitalist dystopias, like these places actually, these nations place a lot of emphasis on safety and maintain redundancies, right? Redundancy is the key to safety in general. You can never have too many people working on safety measures, and you can never actually, especially in air travel, you can never have too many redundancies. It's not a thing. Like most of these planes have multiple fail safes. When something experiences a point of failure, there is like numerous other systems in place that you can utilize. Right. The problem is with, you are wrong, Korea has a terrible track record of safety. I mean, okay, Japan. There's never going to be, my point is this. There is never, first of all, I'm pretty sure that Korean safety standards, especially for flights, have gotten much better since that, not the Jeju Island tragedy, but the previous one before then. The reason why I'm using that as a point is that no matter how safe you want to be, there's always going to be some issues. Accidents still happen, okay? But the major problem is safety measures yield positive results, not immediately, but they yield the positive results that are invisible And those benefits can only be seen in the long term, okay? Because instability and unsafety, like instability and a lack of safety, will cause people to lose confidence in flying in a tin can, okay? When that happens, the entirety of the airline industry is cooked. But if we are so hyper-focused on short-term profit, okay, over long-term stability, safety is inherently antagonistic to those goals. Safety measures require more people to be hired. Safety measures require the process of procurement to be longer. Safety measures require the process, everything to be slower, right? And that is antagonistic to supercharged profits. It leads to lower profit margins. So safety and regulation is inherently antagonistic to profits. That's it. And the more we care about profits, the more we emphasize the importance of profit margins improving, the less we emphasize the importance of safety. Let's continue.
The ability to turn, and the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. And it did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end. And by that time, it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height because if it wasn't the same height, you could have gone under it or over it. And nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower. But it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made. And you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. We're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position, and I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have, and then they changed it back. That was Biden to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, that was, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, you know, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the President's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We've had a whole of government response, local.
Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy also just sent a memo directing staff to eliminate any rule, document, or policy from the past 4 years that relate in any way to climate change and greenhouse gas. Transportation is the biggest greenhouse gas emitting sector in the U.S. Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy just sent out a memo directing staff to give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. Wait, what? To the extent practicable, relevant, appropriate, and consistent with law, mitigate the unique impacts of DOT programs, policies, and activities on families and family-specific difficulties such as accessibility of transportation for families with young children. Give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average, including administering the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program. I don't understand. Is it like DEI without saying DEI? Aren't communities with a higher birth rates above the national average literally like minority communities? Are they just like trying to sneak in DEI or something without... What is happening? Sent to me from a pilot. Beginning on Saturday, February 1st, San Carlos Federal Contract Tower will be understaffed. ATC 0. Oh, great. That's cool. That seems like a good... Wait, unstaffed? Wait, my brain refused to read it correctly. Wait, what? Unstaffed? What? Dude, I swear to God, my brain didn't read it. My brain was like, oh, understaffed. Great. Like my brain was like, no. ATC 0 is usually a thing at small airports. This morning, we were informed by FAA headquarters that the SQL tower will be unstaffed. ATC 0, starting Saturday, February 1st. The FAA has awarded a new contract for air traffic services SQL to Robinson Aviation. However, the contract does not include locality pay to account for the high cost of living in the San Francisco Bay Area. As a result, RVA's employment offers to current SQL controllers were significantly lower than their current compensation under Serco. Understandably, all current controllers have declined RVA's offers. Our controller's last day at SQL will be Friday, January 31st. If you have the chance, please thank them for their excellent service they provided the SQL for the past year. We requested temporary FAA staffing for the tower solution currently being implemented at Eagle Airport in Colorado during its transition from Serco to RVA. However, the FAA informed us this morning that they will not provide temporary personnel for SQL. Key Airport, a long approach to SFO to lose all air traffic controllers this week. So this is a tiny airport, right? And you might think, well, it's just a tiny airport. Who cares? Like, there's plenty of tiny airports that just go unstaffed from time to time. But isn't this near a major airport? There's still obviously like a network of, there's obviously still planes that are flying in the sky above and near this area, especially when they're approaching a major airport. And therefore, I see this being Tipster is a private pilot, not for an airline. I'm a pilot. I received this email from an airport manager about the issue that's been growing problem for the years in the Bay Area, and is now growing even worse. San Carlos Airport is an airport within 10 miles of San Francisco International Airport, and will have no traffic controller starting February 1st. Oh, SQL is directly between SFO and a NASA test site. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna let Trump ride for a second, or Sean Duffy ride for a second.
Federal, and when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible, with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, a young captain, Staff Sergeant, and CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the President is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DoD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you very much.
JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means, on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C., is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior. And that's what we're going to have. Yeah, yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace.
Something that is often talked about, obviously, but it bears repeating in this process that I find particularly strange is the reality that someone like Pete Hegseth talking about DEI standards and unqualified people being hired for positions within the government is so insane. It's like, bro, do you hear yourself? Like, are you okay? Like, what are you then? Like, what do you mean? Oh, we need superior hiring practices, I say, as I am a guy who straight up unqualified for the position. Like, the Trump administration across the board has hired some of the least competent people I have seen for key positions. Okay? Like, what do you mean? It makes no sense to me. I mean, it does make sense, obviously, because they have one quality that clearly transcends all others in terms of importance, which is that they are telegenic and white. How are you getting home, King? I mean, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. It's getting more difficult by the day. He does look like Dick Cheney, the guy who's rubbing his hands. You're right. Sean Duffy is literally an MTV reality TV show, Andy. It's insane. Is it insane, or is it just, you know, how things are in the United States of America? Have you seen the Fem Shapiro video yet? No. More like, why are you coming home, King? Because it's my obligation, you know? It's my job. I got to do it. All right. What time is it? It's like It's 7:30 out here. I have to
stability.
move
The situation
to the
is
next
really bad right now.
segment
I want
today,
to hear from Ms.
because
President
we have a
if you
lot going
any
on.
plan
We got to lock
in the future
in.
to bring in the
Well, you're
Democratic
asking me a question about
Republic of
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think were the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you. Please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who is at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was the crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher. So if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines Center, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was the helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger?
There were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, have I spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President,
not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order. You say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thank you. We see everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government? What plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistakes. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60
It's
planes
common
coming
sense,
in during
dude.
a short
Common
period of time, and they're all
sense.
coming in different directions.
Of course.
And you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. ice skating community was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real, but the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website.
Who said that, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
Take a look what I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration,
Nice and easy.
too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order, bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please.
Respectfully, it was on the website.
Quiet.
Welcome back to the, I'm sorry. You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any?
I heard that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your viewplane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. I had a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations, and the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good. It was really good.
When I tried to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know, but the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please. No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir.
Well, I made the reforms, actually.
What is your message?
3 days ago, I made the
Yes,
reforms.
sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay?
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitated to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have the highest level people. We've already hired some of the people that you've already hired for that position long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake.
Thank you, Lord. Saved. Yeah, you got it. I was going brain dead. I know. I love asking Donald Trump what continuity of government missions mean. Like, just a man who is completely incapable of that, understanding what that means. It's too difficult of a word, too difficult of a concept for him to broach, to even begin to explain.